A Plaguelands Media production.
Hey everyone, this is Hugh from Plaguelands Media. Today I've got something really special for you. This was a graphic novel that I didn't even know had been published. This came out in August of last year. But there is a YouTuber known as Comic Tropes who has a fantastic channel. I'm actually going to put a link to his channel in the description below. I urge you all to go and check it out. He does some fantastic stuff looking at all aspects of comic books, but primarily he's focused on art. And he did a top 10 list of comics of 2021, and his number 2 and number 1 book picks, I should say, are very interesting to me. So I immediately went out and purchased them, and this one arrived yesterday. I started reading it yesterday, finished it today. Did you hear what Eddie Gein done by Harold Schechter and Eric Powell? And this is basically a true crime graphic novel going over the life and crimes of Ed Gein and how they not only affected the people investigating them, but they affected the people of the town of Plainfield and reporters who are kind of working on it and things like that. Now, if you don't know who Ed Gein is, hey, keep watching this video because I'll tell you by going through this book. If you do know who Ed Gein is, keep watching the video anyway. You'll fucking love it. So without further ado, let's get straight into So this is Did You Hear What Eddie Gein Done? By Harold Schechter and Eric Powell. Harold Schechter is a true crime novelist, and Eric Powell is an Eisner Award-winning artist who has done art for books like Superman, the Hulk, and he's most famously known for inventing the Goon, his own comic book series. Absolutely fantastic graphic novel. So you can already see the caliber of the cover, the art, and everything. What we have is basically the story of Ed Gein. For those of you that don't know who Ed Gein was, he was a serial killer who murdered 2 women, possibly more. He would skin them. He would dig up corpses. He would make like a belt out of clitorises. He would wear their skin. Really a sick puppy. But, of course, the inspiration for Norman Bates from Psycho, the novel by Robert Bloch, and later the movie by Alfred Hitchcock. Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Jamie Gump from Silence of the Lambs. Although, in all fairness, Jamie Gump is kind of an amalgamation of Ed Gein and Ted Bundy, but I'm, getting away from myself here. So we have our table of contents. It's split up into 11 chapters with notes, appendix, and bios. Each chapter has this kind of fake or mock-up of a newspaper. So we start with the release of Psycho, and interviewers are interviewing Alfred Hitchcock. Now, this interview itself, this is actually what Hitchcock said when he was being interviewed by another filmmaker. So these are direct quotes. The book itself is meticulously researched. There have been some liberties taken with some characters. The characters of the reporters are basically an amalgamation of all the reporters that were working on the Ed Gein case. There's also a professor of psychology who appears later in the story, and she is just basically a mouthpiece for the theory of the writer and artists. You can see the art is phenomenal. Now, what's interesting is this book actually delved into something that I wasn't familiar with, and that's Ed Gein's childhood. So we learn about his mother, his overbearing mother who wanted a daughter. She had an elder son. Well, she had one son, she wanted a daughter, and Ed was born. She was kind of the tyrannical matriarch. His father really didn't do much of anything, was a lazy drunk. But his father would beat his mother and him and his brother. So you find out that his mother's super religious, and so they move to Plainfield, which is where the Gein farm was and where Ed committed the murders and dug up the bodies. So this is kind of Ed trying to fit in at school, his mother kind of keeping him under the thumb. There is an allusion to a sexual assault, but that's kind of all it is, because it couldn't be corroborated. And then he's starting to do weird stuff like putting the hook in the fish's eye. Then we see that Ed's father passes away, and then ultimately Ed's mother passes away. And so what this does is it really kind of, I don't know, I know that what he did was reprehensible, but you do kind of see this idea of nature versus nurture coming out. Maybe if his mother hadn't been who she was or did what she did, then, maybe things would have turned out differently. His brother dies. You can see his mother kind of makes him help her dress. He gets these weird feelings and things like that. And then finally, his mother passes away. I believe his brother also died in the interim there, under mysterious or suspicious circumstances. So then we have kind of all of these things of Ed's kind of day-to-day life, whatnot. How he kind of interacts with his neighbours, the famous hat from the, if you've seen the photographs or of him being arrested. And then he kills the woman in the store, kind of takes the body, and this is where the police become involved and they find what he's been doing with the masks. There's the belt of nipples. I said clitorises before, but it was nipples, box of noses, the skin on the chair, a wooden lampshade made from, a lampshade cord made from a woman's lips. And he's ultimately kind of arrested. They try and find out. But as you learn from reading this, that Ed Gein was a kind of a pathological liar. So what he says and maybe what he did, not exactly the same thing. Here's a nice fact. The head here in this panel is an homage to the cover of Crime Suspense Stories issue 22, which was the EC comic book that was brought up at the Senate hearings on decency, and which ultimately caused the creation of the Comic Code Authority and the downfall of EC horror comics. The book Seduction of the Innocent kind of goes into all of that. There's Ed Gein. Now you get all the people of town kind of talking about Ed and what he did. And now we have the psychiatric assessment, the psychiatric evaluation here. Not going to go into detail. It's well worth you reading it. And ultimately he is found insane and sent to a mental hospital. A few years later, the doctors at the hospital say he's fit to stand trial. He is found guilty of first-degree murder, but this character is made up, Professor. He's found guilty of first-degree murder, but ultimately found insane and sent back to the mental hospital. You can see here at the trial, they showed him pictures and he's just kind of leering at them for 5 minutes. He was staring at them, which everyone was like disgusted at. And he tried to claim that the murder was an accidental shooting. He was going to buy a gun. He wanted to test to see if the bullets would fit, and the gun went off. But then he took the body back to his place and did terrible things with it. He tried to get released. They said no, and ultimately in 1984 he passes away, and that is where the story ends. An absolutely phenomenal retelling, recreation, study of the character of Ed Gein, but also how it affected the individuals in the town itself. On the night that he was arrested, one of the sheriffs basically beat him up, and the defense was going to use that to try and get him off the murder charge, and that sheriff couldn't testify because around the time of the trial he passed away, and a lot of people speculate that perhaps he couldn't handle the fact that he might be the reason Ed Gein was released. Now at the end we have some notes. These are really, really interesting. They just point out things from different pages. So if you're interested in that. And then we have 2 appendix, which are transcripts of actual interviews between like a doctor and an author who is studying the case, and another one kind of just some more information on Ed Gein, and then the bios. A really fantastic book. I highly recommend if you're interested in true crime, and if you just want like a really great looking graphic novel, very well written, very well researched, check out Did You Hear What Eddie Gein Done? By Harold Schechter and Eric Powell. Thank you very much for watching. I had a lot of... I couldn't put this book down. I started reading yesterday and finished it today. It was just really amazing. So if you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, leave a comment. We have more stuff coming up. You can follow us on plaguelandsmedia.com, on Facebook, Redbubble, and Amazon. All the stuff is at the ending, on the ending of the video here. So please, everyone, it's a little chilly out where I am, but maybe it's not for you, so go outside. Maybe read a fucking book outside for a change. And I'll see you all in the next video. Stay safe. Take care.